We cannot live without food. Food is the natural fuel by which we move, breathe, and at the expense of which our heart beats. But recently we have been hearing more and more about such things as therapeutic fasting or interval fasting, and what will happen if we refuse food for several days. What processes will occur? And is it useful or harmful? The answer is actually quite complicated and in some places unexpected, because some processes will be good for us, while some others can be bad for us. How to make sense of it all we will answer in this video, so watch it to the end. It will be very interesting and useful. Here we go. Day 1, at the very beginning the body will actively use energy reserves, primarily glycogen. Glycogen is a special molecule where 1 gram of glucose is mixed with 4 grams of water, and half of the glycogen is stored in our liver, and the other half in our muscles, so the average adult body has about 400 grams of glycogen in total, although it really depends on how active you are in sports. Because you can have even 1 kilogram of glycogen in the muscles of an active athlete, it's only the muscles, and also in the liver, but nevertheless these reserves are approximately enough for the first day of hunger strike. It is necessary to tell that glycogen is the most accessible source of energy which the organism starts to use in the first place, and it is necessary to tell that while we use glycogen we will not experience considerable moral sufferings, that is, we will not have so much weakness, discomfort. Of course we will have rumbling in the stomach, it's unusual, but so directly on the intellectual and physical work that it still does not affect much. But what will happen next? The second day, as a rule, after the first day of the absolute head glycogen reserves, i.e. the most easily available energy, are exhausted, and the body begins to switch to the use of fat depots. Here our hunger begins to increase, efficiency also begins to fall. We may notice that we think a little less cheerfully, and somehow energy and desire to run somewhere too less, but still no significant threat to health. Let's go further. The third day of hunger strike, after 3 to 4 days our strong feeling of hunger begins to dull. It is a protective evolutionary mechanism, so nature has taught us. In the first days, when we do not finish eating we really begin to feel strong hunger. The brain sends a signal, urgently go something eat, otherwise you simply will die of hunger. But if we wait out the first 3 days, then further the body begins as if to understand, well, there is no food anyway, apparently the hungry time has come, so there is probably no point in torturing yourself with an excessive feeling of hunger. There is no food anyway, so I'll muffle the feeling of hunger. This is what happens after glycogen reserves are exhausted, and after the body has begun to use the most available fat cells, also the process of catabolism, that is, energy decomposition. Our muscle tissues begin to be involved, our body weight continues to fall rapidly. And in addition to fat we of course also lose muscle mass, and here is where the famous ketone bodies begin to be produced. This process is often called ketosis. Ketone bodies are actively produced in the process of using fat tissue to provide energy to the body. And even if you go to take a test on the 4th or 5th day, on the one hand someone takes it as a positive signal, it means that the hunger strike really works, really burns the fat, but on the other hand it can also carry harm to the health of our body. So some people after a few days of starvation blood pressure begins to fall very strongly, resulting in of course the person has no strength and concentration in general, and sometimes people even faint. One of my friends once tried starvation for a week, and then the blood pressure dropped. Fortunately there was no accident. He quickly realized that if I somehow learned to cope with this slight weakness and defocus, then as soon as I sat behind the wheel I realized that I cannot concentrate on driving. I do not understand where I am, I do not navigate the area, and so drive on the road is just dangerous. Well, go on. The 7th day, after a person has not consumed a single gram of food for a week, the body has already completely used up in glycogen, and easily accessible fat cells, and easily accessible muscle cells. After a week of hunger strike the body begins to literally eat itself, including the use of tissue of vital organs for own food, such as liver and heart. Sounds certainly creepy, but in fact they are all very much individual. If someone had a significant reserve of energy, a large fat and muscle layer, then this week will be easy for him, well, relatively easy. But if a person was originally thin, then from the second week there really can be problems. Going further, the 3rd and 4th week, the symptoms of fasting begin to aggravate significantly, and the state of health deteriorates. There will be noticeable atrophy of muscles, the person will obviously get thin and weak, difficulties with the locomotive system will begin, even the heart rate will slow down greatly, and subjective sensations will seem that he is very cold, and as if he is freezing all the time. Of course, the person will begin to have severe problems with concentration. What was at first will seem to be just flowers, and even begin to fall vision. And after a month of fasting, due to the fact that a person is very deficient in thiamine, or as it is also called vitamin B1, the person will have double vision and dizziness. If the hunger strike lasts more than 6 weeks, then it is already a direct and very serious threat to human life, because most of the time the person will be literally not with us, he will hardly be conscious and will hardly react to what is happening. Very often, when a person has completely used up the reserves of all his vitamins and minerals, he begins to get scurvy. Some people may even lose their sight and go deaf at this stage, and after 6 weeks of starvation a person may die from either heart failure or excessive intoxication. Well, it does sound a bit creepy, so fasting for several weeks is certainly not recommended, and there is no need to do it. On the other hand, small short sessions of fasting for half a day, for 1 day, maybe for 2 days, can go safely or even with benefit for the body. Of course, in everything one should know the measure, listen to your condition, and in no case rush into extremes. In everything one needs a reasonable approach.